Chapter 121, Don't Let Your Money Hurt You. No matter how reluctant Baize was, he could only retract his hand and say to Jianyun, Your mother still needs to do some checks. I can only judge when I see the results. Thank you. Jianyun smiled and said, Then Director Bai, you go ahead first. I will leave first. Jianyun turned around and walked out the door. At this time, Huo Liancheng suddenly let go of her hand and walked away in big strides. He left Jianyun behind. Jianyun looked at his straight back. Her intuition told her that he was angry. She lowered her eyes and thought for a moment. She quickened her pace and chased after him. Wait, Jianyun, wait a moment. Baize suddenly opened the door and called Jianyun. Jianyun turned to look at him. Director Bai, is there anything else? Baize looked at Huo Liancheng's back with worry. He thought for a while and pulled Jianyun to the other side of the corridor. He frowned and asked, Is there anything else? Is it because you don't have enough money? Jianyun blinked and looked confused. She did not understand why Baize suddenly asked this. Baize thought for a while and said, What I mean is, if you do not have enough money to pay your mother's medical bills, I can help. Don't misunderstand. I do not have any other intention. I just want to help you. After all, you and Yanran are high school classmates. You do not need to. Baize looked like he wanted to say something, but did not say it. He hesitated and, Director Bai, I don't know what you mean. What does this have to do with Bai Yanran and me? The more Jianyun heard, the more confused she became. She did not know why Baize suddenly mentioned Bai Yanran to her. Jianyun only found out that he was Bai Yanran's little uncle when she chatted with Baize a few days ago. Although Jianyun and Bai Yanran were not in the same class, they were in the same grade back then and naturally knew each other. Later on, they were the top humanities and science students in Boshan City during the college entrance exam. Jianyun, how should I put it? I mean, you are a good girl. Don't do things that you don't want to do because of money. Baize said meaningfully to Jianyun. Jianyun also came to her senses at this time. Baize's words were clearly saying that she had hooked up with rich President Huo for money. Looking at his expression, it was obvious that he was thinking in an impure direction. Jianyun's face showed a trace of embarrassment. She hurriedly waved her hand and said, Director Bai, you misunderstood. My relationship with him is not what you think. Then, are you really boyfriend and girlfriend? Baize still did not give up. No. Jianyun subconsciously wanted to say no, but suddenly a big hand reached out from behind her back and covered her mouth. Jianyun felt her back hit a hard wall, and the familiar aura of a man instantly enveloped her. Huo Liancheng's cold and unhappy voice rang in her ears. What relationship do we have? It doesn't seem to be Director Bai's turn to care. Huo Liancheng, who had come behind Jianyun at some point, also had an unfriendly expression. This time, it was Baize's turn to be embarrassed, but he really liked Jianyun and wanted to fight for her. So he said to Jianyun, You don't need to worry about anything. If you really need help, I am willing to help you. No reason, no reward at all. Jianyun blinked when she heard Baize say this. For a moment, she was really moved. She felt that Huo Liancheng was too eccentric and did not want to be with him from the bottom of his heart. She was also feeling weak about being threatened by him to get married. She did not know what he was trying to do. If there was a chance. Huo Liancheng saw Jianyun was hesitating. From his angle, he could see her eyes rolling around. He was suddenly angry. He used his arm to hold Jianyun's neck and made her look up at him. Her cold eyes almost shot out ice blades. Jianyun's heart trembled. She quickly lowered her eyes and looked at Baize with an embarrassed smile. Director Bai, thank you. I really do not need help. Baize would not believe Jianyun's words. When he saw Jianyun being carried by Huo Liancheng, he could not help but try to persuade her. But Huo Liancheng would not give Baize this chance. It was not easy for him to trick Jianyun into his hands. How could he let her have the chance to escape again? Let's go. Huo Liancheng crossed Jianyun's shoulder with one arm and carried her away. However, in Baize's view, this action was like him strangling Jianyun's neck and threatening her. Huo Liancheng's legs were long and he took a huge step forward. Jianyun could not keep up with his steps and looked like he was dragging Jianyun along. How can you treat her like this? Baize was furious. He rushed forward and wanted to grab Huo Liancheng's hand. Huo Liancheng's reaction was fast. Before Baize could touch him, he pushed Baize away with a backhand. His handsome face showed anger. Jianyun turned around and saw Baize stumbling and almost falling. Someone in the doctor's office heard the sound and came out. Not far from the corridor, there were some patients and family members who were looking over. She did not want to be the topic of conversation. She quickly shook off Huo Liancheng's hand and ran to Baize's side. She held him and asked with concern, Director Bai, are you okay? Jianyun, how dare you say you're okay when he treats you like this? Baize angrily grabbed Jianyun's hand. His usually gentle and refined eyes carried a trace of anger. How should I say it? You really misunderstood. He really is me, my boyfriend. It's just that we had a conflict earlier, and he went on a business trip, so he doesn't know about my situation. Jianyun was really speechless. She did not even know what was wrong with this seemingly good-tempered Director Bai today. Why did he keep wanting to meddle in When Huo Liancheng heard Jianyun finally admit that he was her boyfriend, he was secretly happy in his heart. But when he saw Baizhe holding Jianyun's hand and not letting go, he suddenly narrowed his eyes. He walked over and pulled Jianyun away from Baizhe without any explanation. At the same time, he said very impatiently, "Let's go." "What are you talking about?" "Director Bai, I'm leaving first." Jianyun quickly greeted Baizhe and was dragged away by Huo Liancheng. Baizhe still wanted to chase after her, but a nurse came to him in a hurry. He had to check on the patient first. Jianyun was dragged to the stairs by Huo Liancheng. She wanted to ask why he was here, but she was hugged by him. Her eyes turned black and her lips were blocked. Huo Liancheng's kiss was as fierce as before. He kissed very deeply. It was like a storm that almost blew Jianyun off her back. He saw her face turn red and then reluctantly let go of her. But his expression was still very ugly. "Is it that hard to admit that I am your boyfriend?" Huo Liancheng bit Jianyun and said angrily. "You are clearly not." Jianyun was in pain. She was even more shocked that Huo Liancheng had kissed her twice this morning. What did he mean? "He is not your boyfriend. Why would he kiss you like that?" Huo Liancheng was unhappy. "You're the one forcing me." Jianyun was also unhappy. She had been scolded by him for no reason, and now she was kissed by him for no reason. She had a temper. Chapter 122, Make a Scene in the Ward. "You?" Huo Liancheng was so angry that he laughed. He held Jianyun's chin and narrowed his eyes to look at her. "Good." Jianyun felt that his expression was not right and could not help but wonder if he should say a few good words. However, Huo Liancheng did not wait for Jianyun to speak and continued. "Is it because you heard that a man is willing to help you now, and you want to break the bridge after crossing the river? Where did the bridge come from?" Jianyun glared at Huo Liancheng from the corner of her eyes. She was still wondering why Huo Liancheng kissed her again and again. She didn't pay attention to the first half of Huo Liancheng's sentence. "What is your relationship with Director Bai?" Huo Liancheng saw that Jianyun was lost in thought, and thought that she was thinking about what Baizhe said just now. The corner of his eyes twitched and twitched. "We have nothing to do with each other." The stairs were usually quiet, but Jianyun felt that she was pressed against the wall by Huo Liancheng. The air she breathed was the smell of his body, which made her feel very suppressed. She could not help but reach out to push him. "If you guys are okay, why would he be kind enough to lend you money?" Huo Liancheng did not believe her at all. He put his hands on the wall and wrapped Jianyun in his arms. His expression was, "What do you mean? Are you going to suspect that I have an improper relationship with him again?" When Jianyun heard this, the anger in her heart suddenly erupted. She was already brooding over the words Huo Liancheng scolded her. At this time, new hatred and old hatred welled up in her heart. She was so angry that she pushed Huo Liancheng far away. She hatefully wiped her mouth with a backhand and said with a cold smile, "Since you find me dirty, why are you still kissing me? Didn't you dirty your mouth? Also, if you think I'm dirty, I might not think that you're clean." After saying this, Jianyun did not care about Huo Liancheng's dark face. She turned around and ran out of the stairs. She was really angry. If it was possible, she did not want to get along with Huo Liancheng at all. So what if he was rich? So what if he was good-looking? If she had to endure being humiliated by him every day with him, she would rather be poor for the rest of her life. Huo Liancheng originally wanted to chase after Jianyun, but his phone rang helplessly. He picked up the phone and saw that it was from Yin Che. He knew that Yin Che was currently in Zurich, and he also knew that Yin Che would not call him for no reason. So Huo Liancheng did not care about Jianyun's matter and hurriedly picked up the phone. The more Jianyun thought about it, the angrier she got. She had already started to regret signing her name on Huo Liancheng's marriage agreement without thinking about it. She still had enough money on her for a few days, so she might not be able to think of a way. At the very least, she could go somewhere else to dance. Why did he trick her into believing him last night? Jianyun suspected that Huo Liancheng had a motive for getting close to her, but now she was even more certain that he was not good. Who could stand him acting so weird every day? No, she did not want to get a marriage certificate with him. It seemed like she should call Zhou Xiaolong and ask him if the marriage agreement signed in private had any legal effect. Jianyun sat on the long bench in the corridor for a while. When she calmed down, she got up and walked towards Ouyangfei's ward. However, before Jianyun could walk to the ward door, she saw some people surrounding the ward door. There was a commotion inside, and it seemed that someone was quarreling. Jianyun's heart was immediately shocked. She ran over a few steps and separated the crowd to squeeze in, but when she saw the people in the ward, her mind suddenly went blank. Who is this woman? She is so uncultured. Doesn't she know this is a hospital? The surrounding crowd discussed animatedly. From her tone, it seems like she is a successful third party who came to flaunt her power with her main wife. This patient just came out of the ICU today, and she already came. She must have been waiting for an opportunity. She is trying to kill her legal wife. The people at the door were filled with righteous indignation when they heard that. They were all angered by the woman's shameless behavior. Someone saw Jianyun come over. Her and Huo Liancheng's high-profile appearance had attracted everyone's attention, so a few people recognized her as the daughter of a patient in the ward. They immediately gave her space. Someone asked her, "Young lady, do you know this woman?" How could Jian Yun not know this person? Even if she turned into ashes, she could still recognize her. That woman was about 50 years old. She was not tall, and her skin was well maintained. She wore a dress and put on makeup. Her face didn't look more than 40. This woman was Lin Rong, the mistress of Jian Yun's father. She had an improper relationship with her father 27 years ago, and had maintained it for so many years. It was the same as Jian Yun's father raising a mistress outside. At this moment, Lin Rong was standing by Wu Yangfei's bed. Her face was full of arrogance, and she was full of ridicule like a winner in life. "Wu Yangfei, look at you. Nowadays, people don't look like humans or ghosts. Do you still want to compete with me for a man? Your husband doesn't want you. Your daughter's boyfriend was snatched away by my daughter. Tell me, are you a failure?" Wu Yangfei had been in a coma for many days and had just woken up. She could not stand the excitement. Her face was red. She tried to speak but could not say a word. The veins on her forehead were bulging. She looked very scary. "Mom, don't be agitated." Jian Yun only paused for a second when she entered the room and found Lin Rong. When she saw the sound of the instrument connecting Wu Yangfei's body, she immediately rushed over in shock. Jian Yun grabbed Wu Yangfei's hand. When she saw Wu Yangfei's face turn purple, she was so scared that she almost cried. She even forgot to press the pager and directly screamed behind her, "Quickly go and call the doctor." "Mom, don't scare me. I am Yun Duo. Look at me. Look at me." "Don't call a doctor." Lin Rong blocked the door as if she had gone mad and shouted with a ferocious expression, "Wu Yangfei, you deserve to die. For so many years I swallowed my anger and waited for this day. Didn't you look down on me? Didn't you call me shameless? Look, I'm living a better life now. Hello, why aren't you dead yet?" Wu Yangfei was so angry that her hands and feet were shaking. Jin Yun desperately wanted to comfort Wu Yangfei, but Wu Yangfei was about to collapse and her hands were tightly holding onto Jin Yun's wrist. Jin Yun could not break it, no matter how hard she tried, so she could not even push Lin Rong away. At this time, the doctor and nurse also came. But Lin Rong closed the door and pressed against the door to not let anyone in. Jian Yun heard Bai Zhe outside patting the door desperately. While warning Lin Rong, there were people who had already called the police. "Wu Yangfei, there's one more thing I want to tell you. Your daughter that you are most proud of has already been selling herself. Someone personally saw her get into a rich person's car for money. Don't you hate this kind of behavior the most? Right now, in order to save you, your daughter is raising the medical fees for you. She is with different men. You see how useless you are. It is better to just die. Truly good and evil will always be rewarded. It's not that you don't want to repay, it's not the time yet. Back then, how did you treat me? Now it's your daughter's turn to receive retribution." The more Lin Rong spoke, the more excited she became, especially when she saw Wu Yangfei's face turn purple and her eyes turn white. Chapter 123. He actually supported her to beat someone? Lin Rong's last sentence also successfully made Wu Yangfei's mind completely collapse. She suddenly stared at Jian Yun, and her eyes almost split open. Her gaze was so terrifying that it seemed like she was going to tear her apart. "Mom, I didn't. Don't listen to her nonsense. Doctor, come in quickly. Mom, what's wrong with you?" Jian Yun was in a hurry to explain, but then she realized that Wu Yangfei's mouth was wide open, and she desperately wanted to catch her breath. However, there was a sound coming from her throat, and it looked very scary. Jian Yun was so scared that she started to cry. Lin Rong was still shouting and laughing crazily over there. She locked the door and did not open it, no matter how the people outside pounded on it. Jian Yun desperately wanted to pull Wu Yangfei's hand away, but Wu Yangfei had a needle in the back of her hand, and she did not dare to use any strength. Seeing her mother was about to suffocate, Jian Yun could not help screaming. Just at this time, there was a loud sound and the door of the ward was kicked open from the outside. The door was directly broken, and Lin Rong, who used her body to press against the door, was instantly sent flying. That huge impact made her fall to the ground with a "ouch." She could not get up for a long time. Jian Yun turned her head to look, and her eyes that were covered by tears suddenly reflected Huo Liancheng's tall figure. He walked in first, and Bai Zhe and a few doctors and nurses also rushed in hurriedly. They surrounded Wu Yangfei's bed and only took a look before Bai Zhe anxiously ordered, "Prepare for emergency treatment." A nurse separated Wu Yangfei's hand and tightly grabbed Jian Yun's hand. When Jian Yun heard the word emergency treatment, she immediately felt the world spinning around her, and her legs went weak. She was almost paralyzed on the ground. A pair of large hands supported Jian Yun in time. A familiar aura surged over. Jian Yun looked up and saw Huo Liancheng standing behind her and hugging her. His eyes were unusually firm and gentle with comfort. He said, "Let's go out first. Don't get in the way of the doctor." Jian Yun was almost carried out by Huo Liancheng. She could no longer think, and her mind was in a mess. It was as if she was about to explode. Lin Rong was still lying on the ground and could not move. Huo Liancheng's kick just now was too strong. When she fell, her waist hit the decorations on the wall. At this moment, she was covering her waist and moaning, but no one paid attention to her. The quarrel had already attracted the hospital security guards. The people outside the door were all dismissed. 2 security guards came in and brought Lin Rong out. Someone had just called the police, and the police were on their way. Get lost. Don't touch me with your dirty hands. Lin Rong waved away the security guard's hands and held her waist while panting. Huo Liancheng was holding Jian Yun. He held her trembling body and comforted her softly. Lin Rong did not notice Jian Yun in Huo Liancheng's arms at first. She was only attracted by the tall and handsome Huo Liancheng, who looked extraordinary. Although she was escorted out by the security guard, her eyes were staring at Huo Liancheng. She did not hide the surprise on her face at all. If it was not for Huo Liancheng, not even looking at her, she would have gone up to hit on him. However, when Jian Yun saw Lin Rong come out, her beautiful eyes suddenly burst with great hatred. She suddenly broke free from Huo Liancheng's hand and quickly rushed to Lin Rong. Unexpectedly, she waved her hand and slapped Lin Rong a few times. Lin Rong was stunned. She looked away from Huo Liancheng in a daze and landed on the gloomy face of Jian Yun. She reached out to cover her numb and painful face and said in disbelief, You dare to hit me. You little slut, you dare to hit me. Lin Rong almost screamed when she said the last part. She pounced on Jian Yun and wanted to hit her. Jian Yun dodged and easily dodged. Her expression was gloomy. She shouted angrily, Lin Rong, if anything happens to my mother, I will definitely not let you go. Lin Rong used all of her strength to rush over but missed. Seeing that she was about to hit the opposite wall, it would not be easy to hit her. Even if she did not bleed, she would have to bump her head and not be able to move for a long time. But whether it was Jian Yun, Huo Liancheng, or the 2 security guards, they did not have any intention of pulling Lin Rong. However, at this critical moment, Jian Yun only felt someone rush over from the corner of her eye. A person quickly blocked the wall and let Lin Rong hit him. A muffled groan was heard. Soon after, a young woman cried out, Mom, what happened to your face? Who hit you? The person who came was Lin Lanlan. Jian Yun raised her head and looked at the man blocking the wall. The man had a handsome face. This face used to be the sun in Jian Yun's green years, but later it became her nightmare. At this moment, Shu Haiyang was clutching his chest that Lin Rong had hit. He looked at Jian Yun with a very painful expression. There was disbelief and shock in his eyes. Yun Duo, you. But Shu Haiyang's words were interrupted by Lin Lanlan. She rushed to Jian Yun like crazy and reached out to grab Jian Yun. Jian Yun, you slut, how dare you hit my mother? I will fight you to the death. At this time, Jian Yun did not know who it was either. It was not because she was shocked to see Shu Haiyang suddenly appear here. Her reaction suddenly became slow. Until Lin Lanlan pounced in front of her, she did not react. She was about to be hit on the face by Lin Lanlan. At this moment, Huo Liancheng made his move. He grabbed Lin Lanlan's wrist and used a little strength to push her out. Then, he hugged Jian Yun and took her away from this space. Only then did Jian Yun realize that she was almost hit by Lin Lanlan. She tightly grabbed Huo Liancheng's hand and looked up at him. She thought that he would be impatient to see this farce and would even scold her again. After all, her actions just now were no different from that of a shrew. However, Jian Yun only saw a warm and gentle light in Huo Liancheng's eyes. He hugged her and did not blame her. He only supported and admired her. Yes, appreciation. Jian Yun initially thought that she had seen wrongly, but the smile on Huo Liancheng's lips told her that he was very supportive of her actions. He actually supported her beating others. Does your hand hurt? Huo Liancheng even directly picked up Jian Yun's hand and kissed it by the side of his lips. Jian Yun shook and tried to break free, but he held her so tightly that Jian Yun thought he did it on purpose. Immediately, when Shu Haiyang's voice sounded in Jian Yun's ears, she knew why Huo Liancheng suddenly showed his love for her. He was announcing to Shu Haiyang that he had taken her. Yun Duo, who is he? Shu Haiyang's surprised and angry voice sounded. He rushed over and wanted to grab Jian Yun's arm. Come over. Huo Liancheng would not let Shu Haiyang touch Jian Yun. He held her and stepped back to avoid Shu Haiyang. He frowned and looked annoyed. It was as if Shu Haiyang was so dirty that he could not stand it. Who is he? Huo Liancheng lowered his head and asked Jian Yun. Jian Yun met his eyes. She had a feeling that Huo Liancheng seemed to know Shu Haiyang, but that time he only looked from afar. Logically speaking, he did not see his face clearly, so how could he be sure? Could it be that he guessed it? Chapter 124, The Ex-Boyfriend Appeared. However, Jian Yun did not want to hide it. She did not pretend that she did not know Shu Haiyang. Instead, she told Huo Liancheng honestly, it's my ex-boyfriend. Huo Liancheng's reaction also confused Jian Yun. She thought that he would be unhappy when he heard the words, ex-boyfriend. Unexpectedly, he raised his eyebrows and the corner of his mouth curled into a bewitching smile. Very good. Jian Yun really wanted to ask him what was good, but now that her mother was in the emergency room, she was really not in the mood. Moreover, Shu Haiyang and Lin Rong and Lin Lanlan were still here, which made her puzzling. Especially when Shu Haiyang saw Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng's intimate posture, his expression became very complicated. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to ask something, but Lin Lanlan questioned Jian Yun sternly at this moment. Jian Yun, is this what your mother taught you? My mother is at least older than you. How dare you attack her? You have no respect for your elders. Do you have any family tutoring? Shut up. If you dare to say one word about my mother again, I will beat you up. Jianyun narrowed her eyes and approached Lin Lanlan, step by step. Her tone was as cold as ice. You hit my mother, and you still dare to be so arrogant. Shu Haiyang, look, this is the pure and kind Jianyun you speak of. Lin Lanlan was so angry that she started crying. She wore a white dress and looked weak and fragile. When she cried, it was like a pear blossom with rain, making people cherish her. Shu Haiyang was still like many years ago and could not see Lin Lanlan's weak appearance. He walked over and supported Lin Rong, who was lying on the ground with Lin Lanlan. Then he raised his head and stared at Jianyun with a stern look. Jianyun, no matter what, Auntie Lin is your elder. It's your fault for hurting your elder. You should apologize. Jianyun sneered and ignored Shu Haiyang. She turned around and walked towards Huoliancheng. Although she had already known Shu Haiyang's weakness and right and wrong very well, when she heard that he did not care about anything and only cared about Lin Lanlan, Jianyun's heart still hurt a little. You are not allowed to leave. Shu Haiyang saw Jianyun completely ignoring him, and his heart suddenly started to panic. Especially when he saw how outstanding the man Jianyun snuggled up to was, it made him even more frightened. His brain heated up, and he suddenly stood up and grabbed Jianyun's wrist. Jianyun's right wrist was previously grabbed by her mother with all her might. Wu Yangfei used the strength of dying, and her wrist was already swollen. It was just that she did not have the time to care about it. At this time, Jianyun was forcefully grabbed by Shu Haiyang, and her brows immediately knitted tightly. An unbearable expression appeared on her face, but she did not show it. She gritted her teeth and forcefully endured it. She turned her head and looked. Apologize? Shu Haiyang originally did not want to attack Jianyun, but when he saw Jianyun's cold expression, the nameless fire in his heart appeared. It seemed that he wanted to prove that he still had a place in her heart. He rarely became strong. Let go. Jianyun looked at Shu Haiyang and said coldly, I asked you to apologize. Shu Haiyang was extremely angry. The veins on his forehead were bulging, and his eyes were filled with shock. Jianyun felt that her wrist was about to break. She gritted her teeth, and the last bit of attachment in her eyes to Shu Haiyang turned into ashes. She kicked Shu Haiyang without hesitation, right into his stomach, and kicked him out. Jianyun had learned Tai Chi from her grandfather for many years. Even though she had not practiced it for a long time, her foundation was still there. She used all her strength to kick Shu Haiyang down. Everyone present was shocked. The two security guards were stunned. They did not stop Jianyun from hitting Lin Rong earlier, because they also felt that this woman was too much. They also felt pity for Jianyun, a pretty little girl. But they never thought that this seemingly weak little girl was actually so strong. Lin Lanlan was stunned on the spot. She stared blankly at Shu Haiyang, who was lying on the ground and could not move for a long time. Lin Rong did not pretend to be dead and quickly got up. She looked at Jianyun with mixed feelings and fear. It was just that she wanted to hit Jianyun but was afraid of Jianyun's fighting ability. Even men could be beaten down. The women of the Ouyang family were indeed weirdos. Jianyun was also furious. Her foot was not light nor heavy. When she saw Shu Haiyang lying on the ground and not moving, she felt a bit guilty. But then she thought of his face just now. Jianyun's heart immediately hardened. She sneered and said, Shu Haiyang, who do you think you are? You did not understand anything and just randomly interfered. Where did you get the position to ask me to apologize? And you, Lin Lanlan, your mother is a whore who destroys other people's families. You are not much better. Jianyun hardened her heart and did not look at Shu Haiyang. She turned her head to look at Lin Lanlan, who was staring at her angrily. The corner of her lips curled into a mocking smile. She said, Scumbag, it will be inherited. Jianyun had long noticed that the moment Lin Lanlan appeared here, that pair of restless eyes kept circling Huoliancheng. With Jianyun's understanding of her, how could she not know what Lin Lanlan was thinking? It was just seeing Huoliancheng's appearance and temperament that made her think. Lin Lanlan had always been good at seducing men, especially rich men. What are you doing here? Who called the police just now? Just as Jianyun and Lin Lanlan were confronting each other, a dignified scolding came from not far away. The police came. At the same time as the police voice, there was a woman's scream. Haiyang, why are you lying on the ground? Jianyun turned her head to look. When she saw that it was Shu Haiyang's mother who came, the smile on the corner of her mouth could not help but widen. Good, they are all here. Furthermore, when her mother just came out of the ICU, she said that no one would believe that they did not have any premeditated plans. Police, sir. I called the police. The fat security guard quickly raised his hand and pointed at Lin Rong, who was still lying on the ground. This woman broke into the ward and caused a ruckus. She insulted the patient and stopped the doctor from saving her. Nonsense. How could my mother do such a thing? Lin Lanlan's expression changed drastically when she heard that. She hurriedly stood up and pushed the fat security guard. She said angrily, You are slandering me. I want to sue you. The fat security guard originally saw that Lin Lanlan was a beauty and was too embarrassed to say anything. When he heard that she was going to sue him, he immediately became angry. Police, sir, I am not talking nonsense. Many people saw what just happened. There are also doctors and nurses present. You can ask if you don't believe me. At this time, the door of the ward opened. Baizé walked out with sweat all over his head. Jianyun did not care about Lin Lanlan and the others. She quickly went up to them and asked nervously, "Director Bai, my mother, how is it?" Baizé's expression was very ugly. He thought for a while and still said, "Not good. She was rescued, but she might need a second operation. Moreover, it is hard to say if she can wake up." Jianyun's vision turned dark when she heard him. Her body began to shake. Baizé quickly reached out to help her, but Huo Liancheng held Jianyun in his arms before him. "Don't worry, your mother has you. She will persist for you." Huo Liancheng comforted Jianyun softly in her ear. Chapter 125, She's My Girlfriend. Huo Liancheng had witnessed everything that had happened. This scene was too exciting. With his reasoning ability, he could roughly guess what had happened to Jianyun all these years. He finally understood the reason why Jianyun's character was very different from 6 years ago. It turned out that during these years she had quietly endured so much alone. At this time, Huo Liancheng's heart was full of self-blame. If he could find her earlier, she would not have to suffer so much. Jianyun tightly grabbed Huo Liancheng's clothes. She was almost unable to think, and her mind exploded. She really did not dare to imagine what she would do in the future if her mother did not wake up. "Let's go in and take a look first." Huo Liancheng pushed Jianyun into the ward. Jianyun saw that her mother's heart had already recovered from the emergency treatment and was slightly relieved. "Are you a doctor?" The two policemen walked towards Baizé and asked about the situation. It was that woman who barged into the ward for no reason and humiliated the patient. She even removed the ventilator and stopped us medical staff from coming in to save the patient. Baizé pointed at Lin Rong and was unusually angry. Such a thing had happened in a place under his jurisdiction, and it had already caused him to lose all face. If Ouyang Fei really could not be saved today, he would also have to take great responsibility. Baizé's words made Lin Lanlan lose all of her arrogance. She looked at Lin Rong somewhat helplessly. The latter was already scared silly when she saw the police. Xu Haiyan had long been stunned when he heard the fat security guard say that Lin Rong had caused a ruckus in the ward. At this time, when he heard Baizé's words, his face suddenly turned pale and there was pain in his eyes. He looked at Jianyun, but when he saw Jianyun leaning in Huo Liancheng's embrace, it was as if her heart was cut by a knife. It was so painful that he could not breathe. "Doctor, quickly come and see my son. Is he hurt somewhere?" Mrs. Xu supported Xu Haiyan. Seeing his expression in pain, she thought he was in pain and quickly called Baizé. Although Baizé did not like the way Xu Haiyan looked at Jianyun, he still walked over to check on Xu Haiyan and said, "Nothing. Nothing. Nothing. Why does he feel so bad?" Mrs. Xu was obviously not satisfied with Baizé's answer and asked sternly, "I am in the brain surgery. If you want to know why, go to the clinic and check on the Department of Internal Medicine." Baizé also had a temper and replied with one sentence. A few doctors and nurses who followed Baizé into the ward walked out one after another. Two policemen asked one by one while taking notes. Seeing that everyone was talking about Lin Rong causing trouble in the ward and removing the respirator, if this became serious, it would be an attempted murder. Lin Lanlan was so anxious that her eyes turned. She quickly pointed at Jianyun in the ward and shouted to the police, "Police!" Then she also hit my mother. Also, she even kicked him. Lin Lanlan pointed at Xu Haiyan, who had just stood up with Mrs. Jian's help. Yes. She punched and kicked me. She pitied me for being so humiliated by a little girl at my age. I don't want to live anymore. Lin Rong immediately cooperated and rolled on the ground while wailing loudly. "What? Haiyang, was it Jianyun who beat you up?" Mrs. Xu was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. She jumped 3 feet high. If not for Xu Haiyan pulling her, she would have rushed over and hit Jianyun. "Did you hit them?" The police saw Jianyun come out and asked. Jianyun was about to speak when Huo Liancheng pressed the back of her head and pressed her face against his chest. He said to the policeman expressionlessly, "She did not hit them." The two police looked up at Huo Liancheng. They were mixed in the system and could see people very accurately. In their eyes, the man in front of them was not just handsome. They could tell at a glance that Huo Liancheng had a noble air about him. His eyes had a domineering and fierce look that only those who had been in power for a long time could have. "What's your relationship with her?" The two policemen reminded themselves that they should not offend this man, but they had to do routine questioning. "She's my girlfriend," Huo Liancheng said in a deep voice. Xu Haiyang's face turned pale as soon as he said that. Mrs. Xu and Lin Rong could not believe it. Lin Lanlan could not hide her jealousy and hatred. Actually, Lin Lanlan had already recognized that Huo Liancheng was the man she saw outside the city square that night. Jianyun had gotten into his car at that time. She originally had hope in her heart that Huo Liancheng and Jianyun were just ordinary friends so that she could be more balanced. Otherwise, she really could not bear to see Jianyun find a man who was even more outstanding than Xu Haiyang. She could not swallow this anger. However, at this time, when Lin Lanlan heard Huo Liancheng admit that he and Jianyun were boyfriend and girlfriend, she was still naked jealous. It was as if there was a snake crawling in her heart, causing her to speak without thinking. She could not help but loudly criticize Huo Liancheng. You are lying. We all saw Jian Yun kick Shu Haiyan just now. Right. I can testify. She was the one who kicked me. Lin Rong also echoed. The police looked at Huo Liancheng again. Jian Yun wanted to raise her head and say something, but just as she moved, Huo Liancheng pressed her head back again. President Huo said without changing his expression, he was the one who attacked my girlfriend first. My girlfriend was just defending her. The police listened and recorded. Is there a witness? We can testify that it was indeed this gentleman who rushed out and attacked Miss Jian first. Miss Jian's wrist was pinched and swollen by him. The two security guards hurriedly said, You guys are talking nonsense. Police, they must have been bribed. My son can't have attacked first. It was clearly Jian Yun, that wretched girl who beat him until like this. Mrs. Shu said angrily, Why don't you guys arrest that wretched girl? Mom, stop talking. Shu Haiyan's kick from Jian Yun was real. It hurt so much that he broke out in cold sweat. After understanding the whole story, he was full of regret. He hated himself for not believing in Jian Yun again and even attacked her. He also saw Jian Yun's wrists swell up just now. He wanted to slap himself a few times. Now he only wanted to leave this place. Why didn't you tell me? Shu Haiyan asked. Don't think that I don't know. You took out all the money in your card and transferred it to that wretched girl Jian Yun on WeChat. 200,000? What happened in the end? She took your money and treated you like this. You actually want me to tolerate it? Mrs. Shu was so angry that she could not bear to hit her son who she loved the most. He was actually beaten by Jian Yun to the point where he could not stand up straight. She could not tolerate this kind of anger. Jian Yun wanted to go in and see her mother, but she could not get away from the troublesome matters here. She also knew that if she did not finish dealing with the matters here, she would not be able to be quiet. Furthermore, Mrs. Shu's words really made her unable to continue listening. She pulled her head out of Huo Liancheng's embrace and said angrily, Auntie, please figure it out. Your son gave me money, but I did not accept it. Also, if you insult me like this again by calling me a wretched girl, I will not be polite to you.